I came to the wedding, but my daughter looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, I am sorry, but you were not invited. Go away." I stood there in my best suit, the one I wore to her mother's funeral, and felt my heart shatter. I quietly left without making a scene. But 5 hours later, all payments for the wedding were cancelled. No me, no wedding. If you have ever been underestimated by the people you sacrificed everything for, hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments which city you are listening from. I want to know where my story is being heard. My name is Isaiah King, but everyone back in the old neighborhood in Atlanta just calls me Zeke. I am 72 years old. If you saw me walking down the street in my faded work boots and my old baseball cap, you would probably think I'm just another retired laborer trying to stretch a pension check. You would see the calluses on my hands, the grease that seems permanently etched into my fingerprints, and the way I walk with a slight limp from 40 years of climbing in and out of truck cabs. You would never guess that those hands built King Logistics from a single rusted delivery van into a multi-million-dollar transportation empire. You would never guess that the old Ford F-150 iDrive, the one with the dent in the bumper, is a choice, not a necessity. I learned a long time ago that money is like a loaded gun. You keep it in the holster until you absolutely need to use it. If you wave it around, you only attract trouble. My late wife, Greta, God rest her soul, was the same way. We built our life on hard work, faith, and the promise that our daughter Nia would never have to struggle the way we did. We wanted to give her the world. Maybe that was our first mistake. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My little girl Nia was getting married. She is 28 now, beautiful, smart, and ambitious. But somewhere along the way, she started to drift. She started dating Preston Sterling, a young white man from a family that claims to be old money in Georgia. Preston drives a Porsche. He wears loafers without socks. He talks about investment portfolios in summer homes. Nia changed when she met him. She stopped coming to Sunday dinners. She stopped answering my calls. She started correcting my grammar. When they announced the engagement, Nia told me that Preston's mother, Mrs. Sterling, was handling all the arrangements. She told me not to worry about a thing. She just needed one thing from me, the money. I transferred 250 Zudal into a wedding account for her. It was a gift. I wanted her to have the fairy tale. I wanted her to shine. I also bought the deed to a 5-bedroom colonial house in Buckhead, intending to surprise them with the keys during the toast. I thought I was being a good father. I thought I was buying her happiness. I did not know I was paying for my own humiliation. I pulled my truck up to the front gates of Sterling Manor. It's one of those exclusive resorts outside Atlanta where the driveways are lined with manicured oak trees, and the air smells like expensive perfume and old money. I was wearing my black suit. It is about 10 years old, but I had it dry cleaned and pressed. It is the suit I wore to bury Greta 5 years ago. It is the most respectful thing I own. I polished my shoes until I could see my own reflection in the leather. I wanted Nia to be proud. I rolled down the window as I approached the security booth. The guard, a young man with a headset, looked at my truck with immediate suspicion. He did not see the father of the bride. He saw an old black man in a beat-up pickup truck who must be lost. "Delivery entrance is around the back, Uncle," he said without even looking at a clipboard. "We are not accepting vendors at the front gate during the ceremony." I gripped the steering wheel. My knuckles turned the color of ash. I am not a vendor, son. I am Isaiah King. I am the father of the bride. The guard finally looked at his list. He ran his finger down the names, flipping page after page. He frowned. He looked at me, then back at the list. Then he picked up his radio. "We have a situation at the main gate. There is an individual here claiming to be the father. Name is Isaiah King. Negative. He is not on the access list." My heart skipped a beat. There had to be a mistake. I deposited the 4 million. I paid for the venue. How could I not be on the list? Check again, I said, my voice low and steady. It is King. King, like the man who had a dream. The guard shook his head. Sir, I am going to have to ask you to turn this vehicle around. The Sterling family has been very specific. Guest list only. No exceptions. I was about to reach for my phone to call Marcus, my lawyer, when I saw movement up the long driveway. A golf cart was speeding toward the gate. Driving it was one of the event coordinators, looking stressed, but sitting in the passenger seat was Nia. My breath caught in my throat. She looked like an angel. She was wearing a custom-designed gown with lace sleeves and a train that seemed to go on for miles. It was a $15,000 dress. I knew the price because I saw the charge on the American Express card I gave her. She looked radiant, but her face was twisted in a mixture of panic and annoyance. The cart stopped on the other side of the iron gate. Nia hopped out. She did not open the gate. She spoke to me through the bars like I was an inmate, and she was the warden. "Dad, what are you doing here?" she hissed. Her voice was a sharp whisper, terrified that someone from the main lawn might hear us. I looked at her, confused. "What am I doing here?" "I am here to walk you down the aisle. Nia, it is your wedding day." Nia looked over her shoulder nervously. "Dad, looked, there has been a misunderstanding. We decided to go with a different aesthetic." Aesthetic. I repeated the word. It tasted like dirt in my mouth. Preston's family, they are very traditional. "Dad, you know how it is. They have certain expectations. Having you here looking like this, it is just going to complicate things." She gestured vaguely at my truck, my suit, my face. She was not talking about my clothes. She was talking about me. She was talking about my black skin, my rough hands, my history. She was scrubbing me out of the picture. I stepped out of the truck. I needed to look her in the eye without the iron bars between us, even if I could not touch her. "Nia," I said, trying to keep my voice from cracking. "I paid for this gate. I paid for that dress. I paid for the champagne you were going to toast with. You are ashamed of me." Nia sighed. The kind of sigh a parent gives a toddler who asks too many questions. "It is not about shame, Dad. It is about fitting in." Preston's stepfather, Mr. Sterling, he offered to walk me down the aisle. "It just looks better for the photos. It makes more sense for the brand we are trying to build. You understand, right? You always said you wanted me to have the best. This is the best." She reached through the bars and patted my hand. Her touch was cold. "Please, Dad, don't make a scene. Just go home. I will send you some pictures. I promise, go home." The words hung in the humid Atlanta air. The silence that followed was heavy. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. I searched for the little girl who used to sit on my lap in the cab of my truck while I shifted gears. I searched for the teenager who cried on my shoulder when boys broke her heart. I searched for the young woman I sent to Spelman College so she would know her worth. She was gone. The woman standing in front of me was a stranger in a $15,000 costume. She did not want a father. She wanted a financier. She wanted the check to clear, but she wanted the signature to be invisible. I felt a strange calmness wash over me. It was the same calm I used to feel before a big business negotiation, the moment you realize the other side has overplayed their hand and you hold all the aces. I did not yell. I did not beg. I did not demand to be let in. I stepped back. I looked at the security guard who was averting his eyes, embarrassed on my behalf. I looked at the manicured lawns of Sterling Manor. And finally, I looked at Nia. "You are right," I said softly. "I do not fit the aesthetic." Nia let out a breath she had been holding. Her shoulders relaxed. She smiled, a quick fake thing that did not reach her eyes. "Thanks, Dad. I knew you would understand. You are the best. I have to go. The photographer is waiting." She turned around, gathered her expensive train, and hopped back into the golf cart. She drove away without looking back once. She was relieved. She thought she had solved the problem. She thought she had successfully hidden her dusty working-class background from her new, shiny aristocrat life. I stood there for a moment longer. I adjusted my tie. I smoothed the lapel of the suit Keta bought me. "Goodbye, Nia," I whispered. I climbed back into my Ford F-150. The engine roared to life with a familiar rattle. I put it in reverse and backed away from the gate. I drove down the long, tree-lined avenue past the luxury cars arriving with guests who were invited, guests who fit the aesthetic. I drove for about 10 minutes until I found a quiet spot on the side of the road overlooking the city skyline. I turned off the engine. I sat there in the silence of the cab. I did not cry. Men like me, we cry on the inside. We bleed where no one can see. But while the sadness was there, deep and aching, something else was rising up to meet it. Anger. Cold, hard, righteous anger. I reached into my glove compartment and pulled out my phone. It is an old smartphone screen cracked in the corner, but it works just fine. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Marcus. Marcus has been my attorney for 30 years. He was there when I bought my first fleet of trucks. He was there when I sold the company for 8 figures. He knows where every body is buried and every dollar is hidden. He answered on the second ring. "Isaiah, is everything okay? I thought the ceremony was starting soon." "It is," I said. My voice sounded flat even to my own ears. "But I am not there." "What happened?" "Traffic." "No," I said, "eviction. I was evicted from the premises by the bride." There was a silence on the line. Marcus knows how much I love that girl. He knows how much I put aside for this day. "Marcus," I said, "I need you to do something for me, and I need you to do it right now. Name it Zeke. I need you to access the wedding escrow account, the one I set up for the vendors. Okay, I have the file open. Cancel it." I could hear Marcus typing, then stopping. "Cancel it, Zeke. That account is covering the catering, the venue, the bar, the band, everything. The wedding is happening right now. If I pull the funding, cancel it," I repeated. "Revoke the authorization. Mark the funds as disputed. I do not care how you do it. Just cut the cord, Zeke. This is going to cause a catastrophe. They are probably serving cocktails right now." "That is the point, Marcus. Also, the MX card. Nia has the black card." "Yes, report it lost or stolen. Freeze it immediately." "Done. Anything else?" "Yes, the house in Buckhead, the deed transfer. It is scheduled to go through on Monday morning. Kill it." "The house stays in my name. Put it back on the market." "Zeke." Marcus's voice was soft now. "You know there is no coming back from this. This is the nuclear option." I looked out the windshield at the city I helped build. I thought about Keta and how she worked double shifts so Nia could have piano lessons. I thought about the disrespect, the absolute total eraser of my existence. "She said I wasn't invited, Marcus. She said I didn't fit the aesthetic." Well, let's see how the aesthetic looks when the lights go out and the music stops. I heard the typing on the other end. Furious, fast typing. "It is done, Isaiah. The bank alert should start hitting in about 5 minutes. Thank you, brother." I hung up the phone. I tossed it onto the passenger seat. I sat back and closed my eyes. 5 miles away at Sterling Manor, the waiters were currently pouring the first round of expensive champagne. The band was warming up. Preston and his mother were probably laughing, clinking glasses, celebrating their union with a fortune they thought they had secured. Nia was probably fixing her makeup, getting ready to walk down the aisle on the arm of a man who wasn't her father. They had no idea that the ground beneath them had just vanished. I started the truck. I wasn't going home to cry, I was going to my office. I had a bottle of whiskey in the bottom drawer that I had been saving for a special occasion. And tonight, watching the sun set on my daughter's ungrateful fantasy seemed like occasion enough. The war had started, and they didn't even know they were on the battlefield yet. I sat in the cab of my 1998 Ford F-150, and the silence was deafening. The engine was off. The world outside was muffled by the thick glass windows. I stared at the steering wheel. The leather was worn smooth by my own hands over 20 years of driving. It was honest wear. It was real. Unlike everything I had just left behind at the gates of Sterling Manor, I did not cry. Men from my generation, men who came up from nothing in Atlanta, when the world did not want to give us an inch. We do not cry when we get hit. We bleed, we ache, but we do not break down. Crying is for people who have run out of options. And as I sat there watching a hawk circle high above the manicured trees of the estate where my daughter was currently pretending I did not exist, I realized I still had options. Plenty of them. I reached into the glove compartment. It was messy, filled with old receipts from the hardware store, a tire pressure gauge, and a few packets of hot sauce. But buried underneath all that clutter was a thick manila envelope. I pulled it out. My hands were steady. They were rough, scarred from years of loading crates and fixing engines, but they were steady. I undid the string on the envelope and slid out the contents. The deed to a house, not just any house, a 5-bedroomed room, colonial in Buckhead, brick front, 4 bathrooms, a swimming pool in the back. It cost me $1, $2 million I paid cash. I had the keys in my pocket. It was supposed to be the wedding gift. The surprise. I had imagined the moment 1,000 times. I would stand up during the toast, raise a glass of that expensive champagne I paid for, and hand Nia the keys. I wanted to see her eyes light up. I wanted to see her look at me with that same adoration she had when she was 5 years old. And I bought her that bicycle with the tassels on the handlebars. I slid the deed back into the envelope. That house was empty now. It would stay empty. Then I thought about the bank transfer, $250 Zunian dollars, $250,000. I had wired it to the wedding planner's holding account 3 days ago. Nia had called me sounding stressed, saying the costs had ballooned, that the Steerings wanted specific flowers imported from Holland, that the wine had to be vintage. She said, "Daddy, please, I just want it to be perfect." And I like the fool who loved his daughter more than his own dignity. I sent it. I viewed it as an investment in her happiness. But now, sitting in my truck, I realized it was not an investment. It was a tribute payment. I was paying them to be ashamed of me. I picked up my phone. It is an old model. The screen slightly cracked in the corner, but it makes calls just fine. I scrolled through the contacts until I found Marcus. Marcus has been my lawyer for 30 years. He was there when I bought my first warehouse. He was there when I got sued by the big logistics companies trying to push me out. He was there when Keta died, helping me sort through the estate when I could barely get out of bed. Marcus knows where every dollar of my fortune is buried. He knows I am not just a retired truck driver. He knows I am the silent owner of half the commercial real estate in downtown Atlanta. I pressed call. He answered on the second ring. His voice was cheerful. "Isaiah, my friend, I assume you are calling me from the open bar. How is the top shelf liquor?" I looked out the windshield. The sun was starting to dip lower, casting long shadows across the road. "I am not at the bar, Marcus," I said. My voice sounded like gravel grinding together. "I am in my truck outside the gate." The cheerfulness vanished from his voice instantly. "What happened? Did you have a medical episode? Do I need to send an ambulance?" "No," I said. "I am healthy, but I have been evicted." "Evicted?" Marcus asked, confused. "Evicted from where?" "From the wedding, Marcus." Nia came to the gate. She told me I did not fit the aesthetic. She told me the Steerings are traditional, and my presence would be complications. She told me to go home. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint hum of Marcus's office in the background. I knew he was processing this. He has known Nia since she was in diapers. He helped her with her college applications. Isaiah, Marcus said slowly, his voice low and dangerous. "Are you telling me that after you funded this entire circus, she turned you away at the door?" "That is exactly what I am telling you." I heard the sound of a keyboard clacking furiously. Marcus was already moving. "Zeke, listen to me." Marcus said, "I was going to wait until Monday to tell you this because I did not want to ruin the big day, but since you are sitting in your truck, I was looking at the vendor portal this morning, just double-checking the invoices for the final payout." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "What is it, Marcus?" "I saw the guest list, Isaiah, the final one, the one they submitted to security and the catering company for the seating chart, and your name was on it originally," Marcus said. "But it was crossed out, redlined. The digital timestamp says it was edited 2 weeks ago." 2 weeks, Isaiah. She knew. She knew for 2 weeks she wasn't going to let you in. I felt a coldness spread through my chest, freezing the blood in my veins. 2 weeks. She had called me last week to ask about the money transfer. She had called me Daddy and told me she loved me, all while knowing my name was already crossed off the list. She had taken the money with one hand and erased me with the other. But who is walking her down the aisle? I asked, though I think I already knew the answer. The seating chart lists the father of the bride as William Sterling. Marcus said Preston's stepfather, William Sterling, the man who had never changed a diaper, the man who had never worked a double shift to pay for piano lessons, the man who had looked at me once at an engagement dinner like I was the help. He was walking my daughter down the aisle. He was getting the honor. He was getting the credit. And I was paying the bill. The sadness that had been weighing on me evaporated. In its place, a white-hot clarity took over. It was the same feeling I used to get when a competitor tried to undercut me or a supplier tried to cheat me. It was the feeling of a man who is done playing games. "Marcus," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "I am here, Zeke. I want you to execute the nuclear option." I heard Marcus take a breath. "Are you sure? Once we pull this trigger, there is no unpulling it." I looked at the manila envelope on the passenger seat. I looked at the gates of the resort, where my daughter was currently playing princess on my dime. She made her choice, Marcus. She chose the aesthetic. Now I am choosing the reality. "All right," Marcus said. "Tell me what you want. First, the wire transfer, the $250,000. "It is still pending," Marcus said. "It was scheduled to clear on Monday morning when the banks open." "Kill it," I commanded. "Stop payment. Revoke the authorization. I want that money back in my primary account before the sun goes down." "Done," Marcus said. "I am logging into the portal now." "What about the vendors, the caterer, the florist, the band? They're expecting final payment upon completion of services tonight. Let them ask Mr. William Sterling for it." I said he is the father of the bride, isn't he? Let him pay for the privilege. Cancel all contracts associated with my name. If they have a problem, they can sue me. I have better lawyers than they do. I could hear the smile in Marcus's voice now. He was typing faster. "Okay, the wire is cannelled. I'm sending notifications to the vendors now that the payment source has been revoked. They are going to start panicking in about 20 minutes. "Good," I said. "Now, the credit cards, the black card," Marcus asked. "The one Nia has in her purse, the one with the unlimited limit. That is the one, and the supplementary cards I gave to Preston for the honeymoon expenses. What do you want to do?" "Lower the limit." "No," I said, "burn them. Report them lost or stolen. Flag them for fraud. I want them to decline if they try to buy a pack of gum. I want the card readers to laugh at them." "Fraud might be a stretch, Zeke," Marcus warned. "Is it?" I asked. "They took my money under false pretenses. They took it promising me a wedding I was invited to. That sounds like fraud to me. Just freeze them." "Marcus, total lockout. Freezing them now." Marcus said the system is processing. "Done. The cards are dead plastic. Anything else?" "Yes," I said. "The house. The deed in the envelope next to me. The Buckhead property. That is the one. It is currently in my name, but the transfer paperwork was drawn up to move it to Nia and Preston next week. Shred it." I said the house stays with me. Put it back on the market on Monday. Actually, no, keep it. Maybe I will turn it into a rental. Maybe I will let it sit empty. I do not care. Just make sure their names never touch that title." "Understood," Marcus said. "Zeke, you know what is going to happen, right? In about an hour, when the first payment is declined, or when the coordinator realizes the check bounced, all hell is going to break loose. They are going to call you. Let them call." I said, "My phone has an off button. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to go to my favorite diner on MLK Boulevard. I am going to order the catfish special and a slice of sweet potato pie, and I'm going to sit there and enjoy the silence." "You are a cold man," Isaiah King Marcus said, but I could hear the respect in his tone. "They made me cold, Marcus. They took a warm heart and put it on ice. Now they have to deal with the frostbite." "I will call you if anything explodes," Marcus said. "Do not bother," I said. "I want to be surprised." I hung up the phone. I sat there for one more minute. I pictured the scene inside the wedding, the music playing, the guests laughing. Preston and his mother clinking crystal glasses filled with champagne that cost $300 a bottle. Nia spinning in her dress, thinking she had pulled it off, thinking she had successfully hidden her embarrassing father and kept his money too. They were dancing on a trapor, and I had just pulled the lever. I put the truck in gear. The old engine roared to life, a sound I loved more than any symphony. I turned the wheel and pulled away from the curb, leaving the manicured perfection of Sterling Manor in my rearview mirror. As I drove down the highway, heading back toward the part of town where people didn't care about aesthetics, where people worked for what they had, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had lost a daughter today, yes, and that pain was sharp and deep. But I had regained something else. I had regained my respect. Nia wanted a wedding without me, while she was about to get exactly what she asked for, a wedding without me, and without my money. Let's see how much the Steerings love her when the check comes due. While I was navigating the evening traffic on the interstate, heading toward the heart of Atlanta, a very different scene was unfolding 5 miles behind me. I did not need to be a fly on the wall to know exactly what was happening at Sterling Manor. I knew the schedule, I knew the budget, and I knew the people. I could see it in my mind's eye as clearly as if I were watching it on a movie screen. The cocktail hour would be in full swing on the West Lawn. The sun would be setting, casting a golden glow over the imported Italian marble fountains and the silk-draped tables. Waiters in white tuxedo jackets would be circulating with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres, lobster tails, caviar blinis, truffle-infused dellaed eggs. The air would be filled with the sound of a string quartet playing soft classical music, just loud enough to be sophisticated, but quiet enough to allow the guests to hear Preston Sterling and his mother brag. Preston would be holding court near the open bar. He would have a glass of 25-year-old scotch in one hand, the kind that costs $50 a pour, and he would be gesturing with the other, talking loudly about his portfolio and his assets. He would be wearing that smug, comfortable smile of a man who believes he has won the lottery without buying a ticket. He would be telling his college buddies about the new house in Buckhead, describing the pool and the wine cellar as if he had earned them with his own sweat. He would not mention my name. He would not mention that the deed was currently sitting on the passenger seat of a rusted Ford pickup truck heading in the opposite direction. His mother, Mrs. Sterling, would be nearby holding court with her own circle of admirers. She would be draped in pearls and chiffon, looking down her nose at anyone whose shoes didn't cost a mortgage payment. She would be telling the guests how happy she was to welcome Nia into the family, but adding that little sigh she always did, the one that implied Nia was the lucky one, the charity case being elevated by the benevolent Sterling bloodline. She would be talking about the wedding as if she had planned and paid for every petal, every napkin, every drop of champagne. She would be soaking up the compliments, feeding on the admiration, completely unaware that she was feasting on a meal she couldn't afford. It was the perfect picture of high society, the perfect aesthetic, And then the music would stop. Not literally, not yet, but the rhythm of the evening was about to stumble. I imagine the venue manager, a man named Mr. Abernathy, walking onto the lawn. He is a professional. He has seen it all. He knows when a check clears and when it doesn't. He would not make a scene. He would walk with purpose, his face a mask of polite concern, weaving through the guests until he reached Preston. He would lean in close, whispering so only Preston could hear. "Mr. Sterling, might I have a word?" Preston would probably laugh, thinking it was a question about the toast or the cake cutting. He would excuse himself from his friends with a wink, following Abernathy to a quiet corner near the hydrangeas. "Is there a problem?" my good man Preston would ask, swirling his scotch. "Yes, sir." "There is a significant problem," Abernathy would say, his voice dropping an octave. "We just attempted to process the payment for the second tier of the bar service and the release of the dinner wine. The card on file was declined." Preston would frown. He would look annoyed, not worried. "Declined? That is impossible. It is an MX black card. It has no limit. Run it again." "We did, sir, 3 times. It has been flagged as lost or stolen. The issuer has put a hard freeze on the account." Preston's laugh would die in his throat. "Stolen? That is ridiculous. My fiancée, my wife, she has the card. There must be a glitch in your system. Here, use this one." He would pull out the supplementary card I gave him for the honeymoon expenses. He would hand it over with a flourish, confident that the plastic rectangle was a magic wand that could fix any problem. Abernathy would take it. He would pull out his mobile terminal. He would swipe it right there in the shadow of the oak trees. Beep. Declined. I can see the color draining from Preston's face, the sweat starting to bead on his forehead, messing up his expensive haircut. "Sir, this card is also dead." Abernathy would say, his patience thinning. "And I must inform you, our finance department just alerted me that the wire transfer for the final venue balance, the $250, it has been recalled. The check has bounced, essentially." Preston would stagger back a step, recalled that money was wired days ago. "It is in escrow." "It was, sir, but the sender revoked the authorization this afternoon. As of this moment, this event has a 0 balance paid. We have a $50 sous total as outstanding tab for the cocktail hour alone. And unless we receive payment immediately, I cannot release the dinner service. The kitchen will go dark in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. The clock was ticking. The aesthetic was crumbling. Preston would look around wildly. He would see his mother laughing with the judge's wife. He would see the guests waiting for the signal to move into the ballroom for dinner. He would see the waiters holding trays of food that were suddenly forbidden. The panic would set in. Real, visceral panic. The kind that hits a man when he realizes the ground he stands on is actually a trapdoor. He would run to find Nia. She would be in the bridal suite touching up her makeup, perhaps taking a selfie in the mirror, captioning it, "Dream Life." She would be floating on a cloud of adrenaline and entitlement. Preston would burst in, breathless, pale-looking, like he had seen a ghost. "Nia, we have a problem, a big problem." "What is it?" she would ask, turning around, careful not to wrinkle her dress. "Is it the photographer?" "It is the money, Nia, the cards, all of them. They are dead, and the wire transfer, your dad took it back." I can imagine the silence in that room, the way the air would seem to get sucked out of the space. Nia's eyes would go wide. Her hands would fly to her mouth. "What do you mean?" He took it back. "I mean, the manager is threatening to shut down the wedding. Nia, we have 10 minutes to come up with 50 grand, or they are kicking us out. Call him, call your father. Fix this." Nia would scramble for her phone. Her hands, usually so steady when she was dismissing me or correcting my speech, would be shaking. She would unlock the screen. She would find my contact. She probably has a picture of me there, maybe from her graduation back when she still acknowledged I existed. She would press call inside my truck, driving down Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. The silence was broken by a ringtone. It was a generic default ringtone. I used to have a special one for her, my girl, by The Temptations, but I changed it a few months ago when the calls started becoming nothing but demands for deposits. I looked at the phone, sitting on the passenger seat. The screen lit up the dark cab. Nia calling. I stared at it. I did not reach for it. I did not slow down. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel. The phone rang and rang. It was the sound of desperation. It was the sound of a reality check hitting at 100 mem an hour. I imagined her on the other end. Daddy, pick up. Please pick up. Where are you? You have to fix this. They are going to embarrass us. They are going to ruin everything. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then it started again immediately. I reached over. I picked up the phone. For a second, I hovered my thumb over the green button. I thought about the little girl in pigtails. I thought about the promise I made to Keta on her deathbed to always look out for our baby. But then I thought about the gate. I thought about the security guard checking a list I was erased from. I thought about you don't fit the aesthetic. I thought about William Sterling walking down the aisle in my place. I wasn't looking out for her by answering. I had been crippling her. I'd been feeding a monster of entitlement that was eating my daughter alive. The only way to save her, the real her, the one buried under layers of sterling pretension, was to let the monster starve. I pressed the power button on the side of the phone. I held it down. The screen went black. The ringing stopped. The cab was silent again. I tossed the phone onto the pile of old receipts in the passenger seat. It landed with a soft thud. Goodbye, my beloved daughter. Goodbye, princess. Welcome to the real world. I turned the truck onto the exit ramp for downtown. I wasn't going to the diner anymore. I needed to go to Marcus's office. I needed to sign the paperwork to make this official. I needed to make sure that when Monday morning came, there wasn't a single loophole they could crawl through. I needed to build a wall around what was left of my dignity brick by legal brick. As I merged into the city traffic, I saw the skyline of Atlanta lighting up against the twilight. It was beautiful. It was gritty. It was built on struggle and sweat. It was my city, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged in it. Back at Sterling Manor, the 10 minutes were up. I knew what was happening now. Abernathy was giving the signal. The waiters were turning around, carrying the trays back to the kitchen. The bar was closing. The lights in the ballroom were staying off. Mrs. Sterling would be screeching. She would be demanding to speak to a manager, threatening to sue, throwing names around like confetti. Do you know who we are? We are the Steerings. And Abernathy, calm and professional, would deliver the line that would shatter their universe. I know who you say you are, Mum, but right now you are customers with a declined card, and this is a business, not a charity. Please clear the premises. The chaos was just beginning. The rumors would start whispering through the crowd. They couldn't pay. The card bounced. It's a scam. The guests, the elite of Atlanta, the people Preston tried so hard to impress, would start checking their watches. They would start drifting toward the valet stand, texting their friends about the disaster. The humiliation wouldn't just be private. It would be total. It would be public. It would be the kind of stain that doesn't wash out with apologies. I pulled into the parking garage of Marcus Building. I parked my truck next to a row of BMWs and Mercedes. I stepped out my work boots, echoing on the concrete. I adjusted my suit jacket. I walked toward the elevator, a man with nothing left to lose and a whole lot of lessons left to teach. The night was young, and the bill was finally due. I walked into Marcus's office, the air conditioning hitting the sweat on my neck like a cold compress. The room smelled of old leather lemon polish and the kind of silence that usually costs $500 an hour. Marcus was already behind his desk, a glass of amber liquid waiting for me on a coaster. He didn't stand up. He didn't offer a handshake. He just pointed to the chair and then to the glass. I sat down. The leather chair groaned under my weight, a sound that felt too loud in the quiet room. I picked up the glass. It was my brand top shelf. I took a sip, letting the burn settle the shaking in my hands that I hadn't noticed until now. So I said, my voice raspy, "How bad is it?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He slid a thick file folder across the mahogany desk. It was heavy, heavier than a wedding invoice should be. "Zeke," he said, his voice soft, the way you talk to a man who just found out he has a terminal illness. "The wedding cancellation, that is the least of your problems." I frowned. "What do you mean, open it?" I flipped the cover. The first page wasn't a wedding vendor contract. It was a bank statement. My bank statement, specifically the one for the retirement fund Creta and I had set up 30 years ago. The Sunny Day Fund. We called it that because we never wanted to save for a rainy day. We wanted to save for the days we could finally rest. It was sacred money, money sweated for unloading docks in 90-degree heat. Marcus pointed to a line item highlighted in yellow neon. "November 14th, he said, 3 months ago. I looked at the line. "A withdrawal, 50 zolans." I stared at the number. The zeros seemed to swim before my eyes. 50, 00. I didn't authorize this. I haven't touched this account in 5 years. "Look at the transfer destination," Marcus said. I followed the line. It wasn't a wire to a hospital. It wasn't a tax payment. It was a direct transfer to an account labeled P. Sterling Gemini Exchange. "Preston," I whispered. I looked up at Marcus. How did he get access?" He didn't. Marcus said Nia did. The room seemed to tilt. Nia, my daughter, I remembered now. 3 years ago, when I had my hip surgery, I gave her power of attorney and the passwords to the primary accounts just in case I had told her. "If something happens to me, I don't want you locked out." I trusted her with my life. I trusted her with my legacy. "She told me it was a loan," Marcus said, tapping a second document. I found this email in her draft folder when I audited the shared family drive. She was writing to herself, justifying it. She called it a bridge loan to cover Preston's liquidity issues. Liquidity issues. I laughed, a dry barking sound. "You mean he's broke?" "Worse," Marcus said. "He is underwater. Look at the next page." I turned the page. It was a background check on Preston Sterling, the man who wore loafers without socks and talked about old money, the man my daughter was marrying because I didn't fit his aesthetic. The numbers were in red, lots of red. Credit card debt 80,000, personal loans 150,000, and then the big one, gambling losses. "He is not just a bad investor," Zeke Marcus said. "He is a degenerate gambler. Crypto, sports betting, high-stakes poker. He has been bleeding money for 2 years. That old money family of his, they cut him off a decade ago. They are land-rich and cash-poor. They have the mansion, but they can't pay the light bill. They were banking on this wedding. They were banking on you." I felt a sickness rise in my throat. It wasn't just disrespect. It was a heist, a long con. "They weren't marrying Nia because they loved her," I said, realizing the horror of it. "They were marrying her because her daddy owns King Logistics. And because her daddy writes checks without asking questions." Marcus added, "That 50,000, that wasn't for a house or an investment. That was to pay off a bookie and buckhead who was threatening to break Preston's kneecaps. Nia stole from you to save him." I closed the file. I leaned back in the chair and looked at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead. "She stole from the Sunny Day Fund, Keta's money." I thought about Nia standing at the gate in her $15,000 dress. I thought about the way she looked at me with that mixture of pity and annoyance. She wasn't ashamed of my money. She loved my money. She would wrap herself in my money if she could. She was ashamed of the source. She was ashamed of the sweat. She was ashamed of the black hands that earned it. She wanted the fruit, but she wanted to chop down the tree. I realized then that I hadn't raised a daughter. Somewhere in the years of private schools and debutante balls, I had raised a parasite, a snake, and not just any snake. A snake that would bite the hand that fed it and then complain that the blood ruined the flavor of the meal. I took another drink of the whiskey. It burned going down, cleansing the bile from my throat. "She didn't just hurt my feelings, Marcus," I said quietly. "She robbed me. She committed a felony." "Technically, yes," Marcus said, "but since you gave her access, it is a gray area." "But Zeke, the intent is clear. She values that man's lies more than your truth." I stood up and walked to the window. I looked down at the Atlanta traffic, people going home to their families, people working hard, people living honest lives. I gave them a penthouse. I said, "The one on Peachtree?" Marcus asked. "The one with the skyline view?" "Yes, I let them live there, Rentrée, for 2 years. So they could save for a house," she told me. "So Preston could build his portfolio." I laughed again. Build his portfolio. He was building a house of cards on my back. "Marcus," I said, turning away from the window, "the house in Buckhead, the wedding gift. Yes, that is dead. We established that, but the penthouse, the one they are sleeping in tonight, the one where they have all their designer clothes and their wedding gifts, it is in your name, Zeke, fully. There is no lease. It is a tenancy at will." "Good," I said. "End it." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You want to evict them?" "No," I said. "Eviction takes 30 days. Eviction implies they have rights. They are squatters, Marcus. They are thieves. I want you to draft a notice of immediate revocation of privileges. I want you to call the building management. Tell them I have lost my keys. Tell them I suspect unauthorized entry. Tell them to change the locks. Tonight." "Tonight?" Marcus asked. "It is their wedding night, Zeke." "No," I corrected him. "It was supposed to be their wedding night, but there was no wedding. I candled it, remember? So, technically, it is just a Saturday, and on Saturdays I clean house." I walked back to the desk and picked up the file. I looked at the withdrawal slip one more time. $50,000. Keta would have been heartbroken. She would have made excuses for Naya. She would have said, "She is young Isaiah. She is in love." But Keta isn't here, and I am done making excuses. They want to live the high life. I said, my voice hardening into steel, "Let them pay for it. Let Preston use his crypto millions to pay for a hotel room. Let Nia use her aesthetic to keep warm when she finds her Louis Vuitton bags on the curb." Marcus pulled a legal pad toward him. He picked up a pen. "I will call the building superintendent. He said he owes you a favor from the labor dispute last year. He will do it. Tell him to bag everything up." I said, "Don't let them inside. Not for a toothbrush, not for a phone charger. If they want their things, they can make an appointment to come collect them from the loading dock like vendors, because that is what they treated me like. A vendor, a service provider." "You are a hard man, Isaiah," Marcus said, shaking his head. "I am a businessman, Marcus. And I just realized I have been investing in a failing asset. It is time to liquidate." I finished the whiskey in one swallow. The burn was good. It felt like fuel. "Do it, Marcus. And send me the bill for the locksmith. I want to frame it." I walked out of the office. The elevator ride down felt faster than the ride up. I stepped out into the cool evening air of downtown Atlanta. My phone was still in the truck, turned off. I didn't need to check it to know it was probably exploding with voicemails. Panic, anger, bargaining, the stages of grief for a lifestyle that just died. I got into my truck. I didn't go home. I wasn't ready to sit in the empty house where Nia grew up. Instead, I drove toward the West End, to the old neighborhood, to the diner where nobody cared about your last name or your bank account, only about whether you treated people right. Nia was ashamed of where she came from. She was ashamed of the struggle. She wanted to scrub the black off her history and paint it white with sterling money. While she was about to learn a hard lesson, you can't paint over rot, and you can't build a castle on a foundation of lies. I merged onto the highway. The city lights blurred past me. I thought about the 50 $50. I thought about the look on the security guard's face. I thought about, "You don't fit the aesthetic." I gripped the wheel. I hope you like the aesthetic of a Motel 6, sweetheart, because that is the only reservation you have left. I sat in the back booth of the Soul Food Diner on Martin Luther King Jr., drive a plate of catfish and collard greens growing cold in front of me. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a familiar comforting sound that usually signaled the end of a long work week. But tonight, my attention was entirely focused on the cracked screen of my phone propped up against the napkin dispenser. I wasn't there physically, but thanks to technology and a little family loyalty, I had a front row seat to the circus I had just shut down. I had called in a favor from my nephew, Rai. Rai isn't technically my nephew. He is my second cousin's boy, but in our family, titles don't matter as much as blood. Ray works HVAC, has hands as rough as mine, and he hates the steerings. He only got an invite because he fixed the AC in Nia's penthouse for free last summer, and she needed a few more bodies on her side of the aisle to make it look like she hadn't completely abandoned her roots. They stuck him at table 42, right by the kitchen swing doors, the worst seat in the house. But right now, table 42 was the best vantage point in the world. Ray had his phone propped up behind a centerpiece of white hydrangeas, live streaming the disaster via a video call. He wasn't saying much, just letting the camera do the talking. And the camera was showing me a masterpiece of chaos. The ballroom at Sterling Manor was beautiful. I will give them that. Crystal chandeliers, silk tablecloths, waiters and white gloves. But the atmosphere was thicker than smoke. You could feel the tension vibrating through the pixelated screen. The guests were seated napkins and laps, silverware polished and ready, but the plates were empty. It had been an hour since they moved from the cocktail hour to the reception hall. An hour of sitting, an hour of waiting for a dinner service that I knew was never coming. I watched as a waiter walked past Ray's table. He wasn't carrying food. He was collecting the wine glasses, not refilling them, collecting them. "What is happening?" I heard a woman's voice whisper near Ray's phone. "Why are they taking the water pictures?" I saw guests checking their watches. I saw the whispers jumping from table to table like a wildfire. The Sterling side of the room, the side filled with bankers and debutantes, and people who inherited their money from grandfathers they never met, looked indignant. They were looking around with raised eyebrows, tapping their fingers on the table, expecting service as their birthright. On Nia's side, the few folks from the old neighborhood who made the cut looked uncomfortable. They knew the look of trouble. They knew the smell of a bill coming due. Then the camera shifted. Movement at the head table. Preston was nowhere to be seen. Probably in the back office, sweating through his tuxedo, trying to explain to Mr. Abernathy why his crypto wallet was empty. Nia was sitting at the head table alone, her head bowed, staring at her empty plate. She looked small. The $15 round dollar dress looked heavy on her now, like a costume she wanted to take off. But it was the woman standing up who caught my attention, Mrs. Evelyn Sterling, the mother of the groom. She tapped a spoon against a glass. Ding, ding, ding. The room fell silent. She stood up, smoothing the front of her silver gown. She looked every inch the matriarch. Her hair was perfect. Her diamonds, which I happened to know were insured because they couldn't afford to replace them, glittered under the lights. She grabbed the microphone from the stand. She was smiling, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was a shark smile. It was the smile of a woman who was about to throw someone into the chum to save herself. I turned up the volume on my phone. The diner was quiet, so her voice rang out clear and sharp, dripping with that fake southern charm that barely covers the venom underneath. "Friends, family, distinguished guests," she began. Her voice was steady, practiced. "I must apologize for the delay in our service this evening. I know you are all eager to celebrate this union and enjoy the exquisite meal we have prepared." She paused for effect. She looked over at Nia. The look wasn't motherly. It was predatory. Unfortunately, she continued, letting out a heavy, dramatic sigh. "We have encountered a slight administrative hiccup It appears there has been a significant technical failure regarding the financial arrangements from the bride's side of the family. I sat up straighter in the booth. I felt the heat rise in my neck. She wasn't just deflecting, she was attacking. As you know, she went on, her voice lowering into a conspiratorial tone. The Steerings have always prided ourselves on our hospitality. We assume that certain obligation, certain cultural understandings regarding the hosting of such an event were being met with the same level of professionalism and liquidity that we operate with. Sadly, it seems we were mistaken. Cultural understandings, liquidity, I knew exactly what she was saying. She wasn't saying the check bounced. She was saying those people couldn't pay. She was playing into every stereotype, every prejudice in that room to save her own face. She was painting my daughter, and by extension me, as unreliable, broke, and out of our depth. She was sacrificing Nia's dignity to protect the sterling reputation. We are working diligently to resolve this lack of funding, Evelyn said, her hand fluttering to her chest like a wounded bird. But I must ask for your patience. It is difficult when one has to educate new family members on the protocols of high society. We apologize for their lack of preparation. The room erupted in murmurs. I saw the sterling guests nodding, leaning in to whisper to each other. "I knew it," their faces said. "I knew she wasn't one of us." I looked at Nia on the screen. She hadn't moved. She hadn't stood up to defend herself. She hadn't grabbed the mic to say, "My father paid for this. He paid for everything." She just sat there taking it, letting this woman, this broke, pretentious vulture, pick the meat off her bones. Nia was ashamed. She was ashamed of the disruption, yes, but she was so desperate to be a sterling, so desperate to fit into their world, that she was willing to let them slander her own blood just to stay at the table. She would rather be the victim of technical difficulties than the daughter of Isaiah King. I let out a short, cold laugh. It startled the waitress, refilling coffee at the counter. "You want to talk about liquidity, Evelyn?" I muttered to the screen. "You want to talk about protocols?" She thought she was saving the ship. She thought if she blamed the help, blamed the other, she could keep her social standing intact. She thought I was just some old man who got his feelings hurt and ran away. She didn't know I was watching. She didn't know I was the bank. And banks don't get mad. Banks foreclose. I minimized the video window but kept the audio running. I opened my messaging app. I found Marcus's thread. I didn't need to type a long explanation. I didn't need to rant. I just needed to pull the final thread that would unravel the sweater completely. Marcus and I had a contingency plan. We called it Clause 4. It was embedded in the gift contracts for the assets I had provided Nia and Preston over the last 2 years. The cars, the apartment lease, the engagement ring insurance, even the furniture in the penthouse. Technically, legally, those items were loaned assets until the marriage certificate was signed and filed. Until that moment, they remained the property of King Logistics Holdings. And since the wedding was currently imploding and no certificate would be signed tonight, I typed 3 words. Activate Clause 4. I hit send. I switched back to the video feed. Evelyn was still talking, trying to smooth things over, promising that the bar would reopen soon. It wouldn't, and that this was just a misunderstanding by people who aren't used to this level of event. I took a bite of my catfish. It was perfectly fried, crispy on the outside, tender on the inside. 5 miles away, Marcus was hitting a button on his computer. That button was sending automated eviction and repossession notices to the leasing office of the Peachtree Penthouse. It was sending a stolen vehicle alert to the GPS trackers in Preston's Porsche and Nia's Range Rover, which would remotely disable the ignitions the next time they turned off. It was alerting the insurance company to cancel the policy on the diamond ring on Nia's finger, but the most immediate effect of Clause 4 was digital. I watched on the screen as Preston checked his phone. He must have gotten the notification. His face went from worried to terrified. He looked at his mother, who was still rambling on the mic. He grabbed her arm. Evelyn stopped mid-sentence. "Preston, darling, I am addressing the guests." "Mother." I heard him whisper the microphone, picking up his panic. "The penthouse, the lockbox code just changed. We got an email. It says lease terminated due to breach of contract and the car. My app says the Porsche is disabled." Evelyn forgot to move the microphone away. "What do you mean disabled?" Dad, Isaiah. He owns it all, Mother. The apartment, the cars, the furniture. He just took it back. He took it all back." The silence in the room changed. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was heavy. It was the silence of a bomb squad watching the timer hit 0. Clause 4 meant total asset recovery. It meant that when they left this disastrous wedding, they weren't going home to a luxury apartment to cry. They were going to a locked door. They weren't driving away in luxury SUVs. They were calling Uber. They were homeless. They were carless. And thanks to Evelyn's little speech, everyone in Atlanta was watching it happen. I saw Nia lift her head. She looked at Preston. She heard what he said. "He owns it all," she whispered. She looked directly into the camera lens, almost as if she knew I was there. For the first time all day, she didn't look like a bride. She looked like a daughter who realized she just burned down her own house. I took another sip of iced tea. "That is right, baby girl," I said to the phone. "I own the aesthetic, and I just turned the lights off." Evelyn dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a screech of feedback that made everyone cover their ears. The show was over. The lesson had begun. The silence in my truck was heavy, but it was the good kind of heavy. The kind that settles on your shoulders after a long day of hauling freight when you know the job is done right. I sat in the parking lot of Marcus's office building for a long time, just watching the city lights of Atlanta flicker. I did not need to be at Sterling Manor to know the carnage I had left behind. I knew the math, and the math said that right about now the reality was hitting the fan. I imagined the scene at the venue as the staff began to clear the tables. The guests, the high society elite that Preston and his mother had curated so carefully, were not leaving with full bellies and party favors. They were leaving with receipts. Mr. Abernathy, the venue manager, was a man who ran a tight ship. When the wire transfer was recalled, he did not just stop the service. He presented the bill. I could see the waiters moving through the stunned crowd with card readers. $200 for the bottle of Merlot at table 5, they would say. $50 for the valet. The Starings, who prided themselves on their generosity with other people's money, were suddenly forced to ask their guests to pay for their own drinks. The humiliation would be absolute. The whispers would travel faster than the speed of light through the Atlanta social scene. By tomorrow morning, everyone from Buckhead to Bank Row would know that the Sterling wedding was a bouncing check wrapped in silk. But the real show was happening in the back office. That is where they kept Nia and Preston. They were not cutting the cake. They were not having their first dance. They were being held as collateral. Abernathy would have made them sign promissory notes, personal guarantees, anything to cover the $50,000 hole in his ledger for the cocktail hour alone. They would be signing their names with shaking hands, knowing they did not have 50 cents, let alone 50 $50,000. Finally, they were released. I checked the GPS tracker app on my phone one last time before Marcus disabled their accounts entirely. I saw the dots moving away from the venue. They were heading into the city. They were heading to the penthouse on Peachtree Street. They thought the bleeding had stopped. They thought they could retreat to their fortress in the sky, cry about the injustice of it all, and plot their revenge in the morning. They thought they still had a home. I started my truck and drove slowly toward the diner. I did not need to rush. The trap was already sprung. An hour later, Nia and Preston arrived at the high-rise. I can picture it clearly. Nia, her wedding dress stained with mud at the hem from dragging it through the parking lot, her makeup ruined by tears. He pressed in his tie undone, his face red with a mixture of scotch and rage. They walked into the marble lobby, ignoring the doorman, just wanting to get to the elevator, get to the 25th floor, and collapse. They walked to the elevator bank. Preston reached into his pocket and pulled out his key fob. He pressed it against the sensor. Nothing happened. No beep, no green light. The elevator doors stayed shut. He probably pressed it again harder, jamming the plastic against the reader. Still nothing. That is when Mr. Henderson, the building superintendent, would have stepped out from behind the concierge desk. Henderson is an old-school guy, a man I helped out years ago when his union was on strike. He respects a man who keeps his word, and he has zero tolerance for nonsense. Mr. Sterling Henderson would say, his voice deep and echoing in the lobby. The FOB has been deactivated. Preston would spin around, his eyes wild. What are you talking about? Let us up. It is my wedding night. I live here. Not any more, Henderson would reply, crossing his arms over his chest. The leaseholder, Mr. Isaiah King, contacted management this evening. He invoked the immediate termination clause for unauthorized occupants. The lease is void. Nia would step forward, then trembling. Mr. Henderson, please. It's me, Nia, my dad. He is just angry. We just need to go upstairs and sleep. We will sort this out tomorrow. Henderson would shake his head, his face impassive. I cannot do that, Miss King. The locks have already been changed, and per Mr. King's instructions, your personal effects have been removed from the unit. Removed? Preston would screech. Removed where? That is my property. I have suits in there worth more than your car. Henderson would point a finger toward the service entrance, the side door near the loading dock where the garbage trucks pulled up. Your items have been bagged and placed in the loading bay. Sir, you have 30 minutes to collect them before the sanitation crew does their midnight sweep. I can only imagine the sound of Nia's gasp, the loading bay, the trash dock. They ran outside. They ran around the corner of the building to the concrete bay where the dumpsters lived. And there, piled up against the brick wall under a flickering yellow security light, was their life. It was not packed in moving boxes. It was not organized. It was in heavy-duty black contractor trash bags. My instructions to the movers had been specific. Pack it like you are cleaning out a foreclosed home. Preston's Italian suits were wadded up with his dirty gym socks. Nia's designer shoes were thrown in with the kitchen utensils. Her jewelry box was dumped into a bag with the bathroom towels. It was a mountain of black plastic looking like garbage waiting for the landfill. Preston ripped open a bag. A silk tie fell out into a puddle of oil on the concrete. He screamed. It was a primal sound, a scream of a man who believes the universe owes him everything and has suddenly stopped paying. My father is insane, he howled, kicking a bag that probably contained his gaming console. He has lost his mind. How dare he? How dare he do this to the Sterling family? Does he know who we are? Nia stood there staring at the bags. She looked at the service door that was locked tight. She looked at the penthouse balcony far above, dark and empty against the night sky. He dared, she whispered. She finally understood. He dared because he owns it. Preston was pacing now, frantic. We have to call the police. We have to sue him. This is illegal eviction. It is not eviction if you never paid rent. Preston! Nia snapped, her voice cracking. We were guests. We were living on his charity, and he just cut us off. We'll fix it, Preston yelled, turning on her. Call him, cry, beg. Do whatever you have to do. I'm not sleeping on the street. I'm a Sterling. Nia looked at him, really looked at him. Maybe for the first time she saw the fear behind the arrogance. She saw that without my money, Preston Sterling was just a man in a rented tuxedo standing next to a dumpster. She reached into her purse. She pulled out her phone. But she didn't call me from her number. She knew I wouldn't answer. She knew she was blocked. She looked at Preston. Give me your phone, she said. Preston handed it over. His hands were shaking. I was sitting in my truck, finishing the last of my sweet potato pie, when my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, a number I didn't recognize. I knew who it was. It was the call I had been waiting for. I wiped my mouth with a paper napkin. I took a sip of my coffee. I let it ring twice, 3 times. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to wonder if I had gone to sleep, if I had simply stopped caring entirely. On the 4th ring, I slid my thumb across the screen. I didn't say hello. I didn't say a word. I just held the phone to my ear and listened to the breathing on the other end. It was ragged, panicked breathing, the sound of someone who had been running and just hit a wall. Daddy. The voice was small. It wasn't the voice of the bride who told me to go away. It was the voice of a little girl who had scraped her knee. But I wasn't buying it. Not tonight. "Hello, Nia," I said. My voice was calm, steady as a rock. "Daddy, please," she sobbed. "We are outside. We are in the alley. Our clothes, everything is in trash bags. We can't get into the apartment." "I know," I said. "I ordered the bags. Heavy duty, double ply. I didn't want your things to get wet." "Daddy, stop it. This isn't funny. We have nowhere to go. All the cards are declined. The car won't start. We are stranded." "You are not stranded, Nia," I said. "You are in downtown Atlanta. There are plenty of hotels. We don't have any money. Preston's accounts, they are empty, and you froze mine." I took a deep breath. I leaned back in the booth. "You wanted a wedding without me, Nia. You wanted a life that fit the sterling aesthetic. Well, this is it. This is what independence looks like. It looks like paying your own bills. It looks like finding your own shelter. Daddy, please." I am sorry about the gate. I am sorry about everything. Just unlock the door. Just transfer some money. We can talk about this tomorrow." "No, I said we are done talking. You told me I was an embarrassment. You told me I didn't belong in your world. So I removed myself and I took my world with me. My money, my houses, my cars, they are all part of the Isaiah King aesthetic. And you just evicted yourself from it. I heard Preston yelling in the background. "Tell him I will sue him. Tell him I will ruin him." I laughed. It was a low rumble in my chest. "Tell your husband I said that he's welcome to try, but lawyers cost money and he doesn't have enough to buy a hamburger right now." "Daddy, where are we supposed to sleep?" Nia wailed. I looked out the window of the diner. Down the street, the neon sign of the Starlight Motel flickered. It was a place for truckers and people down on their luck. Rooms were $40 a night, cash only. "There is a Motel 6 off the interstate," I said, "or the Starlight. It is cheap, clean enough. You might find a few bugs, but they are honest bugs." "You can't be serious," Nia whispered. "I have never been more serious in my life, baby girl. You wanted to be a grown woman. Be one. Figure it out." "But Daddy—" "Good night. Here, enjoy your honeymoon." I hung up the phone. I didn't turn it off this time. I placed it on the table. I paid my bill at the diner. I left a $20 tip for the waitress who had kept my coffee warm. I walked out to my truck. I imagined them dragging those black trash bags down the alley. I imagined Preston Sterling, the aristocrat, trying to hail a cab with no cash, trying to negotiate a ride to a flea-bag motel. I imagined Nia sitting on the edge of a stained mattress, looking at her ruined wedding dress, realizing that the fairy tale was actually a horror story, and she had written the script herself. It was a harsh lesson, maybe the hardest I ever had to teach, but you cannot learn to walk if someone is always carrying you. And tonight, for the first time in her life, Nia was going to have to learn how to stand on her own 2 feet or crawl. I drove home to my empty house. It was quiet. It was lonely. But it was mine. Paid for. Earned. And as I laid my head down on the pillow, I slept the sleep of a man who had finally cleaned his house. The phone rang at 2:47 in the morning. I was sitting in my leather recliner in the den, a single lamp casting a yellow pool of light on the hardwood floor. I hadn't gone to bed. I couldn't. Adrenaline has a way of keeping an old man awake better than any cup of coffee. I was just sitting there listening to the old grandfather clock tick in the hallway, waiting for the inevitable. I looked at the caller ID. It wasn't a cell phone number, it was a landline. Starlight Motel, front desk. I let a small, humorless smile touch my lips. They had made it. They had dragged their trash bags of designer clothes into the lobby of the cheapest dive on the interstate, paid cash, with whatever crumpled bills Preston had in his pocket. And now they were calling me from a room that probably smelled like stale cigarettes and regret. I picked up the receiver. I didn't say a word. I just breathed into the line and waited. Daddy. The voice was shrill, hysterical. It was Nia, but stripped of all that polished upper-crust accent she had been practicing for years. She sounded like the child who used to throw tantrums in the grocery store when I wouldn't buy her the sugary cereal. Daddy, are you there? You have to answer me. This place... My God, Daddy, there are bugs. I saw a roach the size of my hand on the nightstand. The sheets are stained. Preston is throwing up in the bathroom because the smell is making him sick. You have to come get us right now. Send the driver. Send anyone. I took a sip of my water. The ice clinked against the glass. The sound echoed down the line. "Hello, Nia," I said. My voice was level. No anger, no pity. Just a man conducting business. Daddy, stop this right now. Do you have any idea what you have done? Do you know how humiliated I am? She wasn't asking for help. She was demanding restitution. She was attacking. It was her defense mechanism. When she felt small, she tried to make everyone else feel smaller. You ruined everything. She screamed, her voice cracking. Mrs. Sterling. She was looking at me like I was trash. Her friends were whispering. The Abernathys, the DuPonts, the entire elite of Atlanta saw my card get declined. They saw the manager kick us out. They saw us leave with nothing. You made me a laughingstock. Daddy, how could you be so cruel? How could you be so heartless? I listened to her rant. I listened to her talk about the elite and the Duants, as if their opinions were oxygen. She didn't mention that she had hurt me. She didn't mention that she had erased me. She only cared that her mask had slipped. "Are you finished?" I asked when she finally paused to take a breath. "No, I am not finished. I want my money back. I want my house. You stole my wedding gifts. You stole my life." I leaned forward in the chair. The leather creaked. "Let me correct you on a few things I said. First, I didn't steal anything. I repossessed my property. There is a difference. Second, you are asking the wrong questions. You are asking why I did this. You should be asking yourself why you thought you could treat a man like a dog and still expect him to feed you. "I am your daughter," she wailed. "That is supposed to mean something. Unconditional love. Daddy parents are supposed to love their children no matter what." I closed my eyes. That was the knife. That was the weapon she had used for years. Using my love as a shield while she stabbed me. "Love is unconditional, Nia," I said softly. "Funding is not. Respect is not. I love you enough to let you learn a hard lesson. I love you enough to stop crippling you with my wallet. But right now, I don't like you very much." She went silent for a second, stunned by the rejection. Then the anger returned hotter than before. "You are just a bitter old man. Preston was right. You are jealous. You are jealous that we are moving up in the world. You are jealous that we fit in with people you used to drive trucks for. You are trying to drag us back down to the gutter because you can't stand to see us shine." I looked at the photo on my desk. It was me and Keta standing in front of our first truck. We were covered in grease, tired but smiling. That was shining. That was real. "Preston is throwing up in a motel bathroom." I said, "That doesn't look like shining to me. That looks like the gutter you were so afraid of. Daddy, send the money. Just transfer 5,000. That is all I ask. Just enough to get a decent hotel and some clothes. Please, I'm begging you. Look, I am sorry. Okay, I am sorry I didn't let you walk me down the aisle. I'm sorry about the gate. Is that what you want to hear? Are you happy now? You got your apology. Now pay up." It wasn't an apology. It was an invoice. She was trying to buy her way out of the hole with words she didn't mean. I gripped the phone tighter. "You have the wrong number, ma'am," I said. "What? What are you talking about? It is me, Nia." "No," I said, "my Nia, the daughter I raised." She had dignity. She had pride. She knew the value of $1 and the value of family. The woman on this phone. The woman who bans her father from her wedding because he is too black, too working-ass, too ugly for her pictures. I don't know her. "Daddy, stop playing games." "I don't have a daughter named Shame," I said, my voice dropping to a growl. "I don't have a daughter who treats people like accessories. You told me at the gate that I was a stranger to your world. You told me I didn't belong. You evicted me from your life, Nia, but you fired me as a father. I cut her off. You wanted the aesthetic of the steerings. You wanted the prestige. Fine, you have it. Go ask William Sterling for $5,000. Go ask Evelyn. Go ask your real family. They don't have it," she screamed. "You know they don't have it. Then I guess you are all in the same boat." I said, "You are sinking together." "Isn't that romantic?" I heard a rustling sound on the other end. Then a man's voice. Preston. He must have snatched the phone from her. "Listen here, you old psychopath!" Preston shouted. His voice was slurring. He was drunk. "I'm going to sue you for every dime you have. I'm going to have you declared incompetent. I'm going to take your company, your house, your truck. I'm going to leave you rotting in a state home. Do you hear me? You can't do this to a Sterling." I laughed. It was a genuine laugh this time. The laugh of a man watching a chihuahua bark at a tank. "Preston, son," I said, "you couldn't take a candy bar from a baby right now. You are holding a motel phone in a room that costs $40 a night. You are wearing a tuxedo you can't return because you probably stained it with vomit. You are not a threat. You are a punchline. I give you my word." Preston continued, ignoring me. "I will destroy you. Put Nia back on," I said. There was a scuffle. I heard Nia sobbing in the background. Then her breathing came back on the line. "Daddy," she whispered, He is just stressed. He doesn't mean it." "He means it, Nia," I said, "and so do you. That is the tragedy. You both think you are entitled to the world without lifting a finger, but let me tell you where you are right now. You are standing in the wreckage of your own choices. Daddy, please, I am living in my truth now." "Nia," I said, "you told me to go away. You told me I was a stranger, so I'm honoring your wishes. I'm acting like a stranger. And strangers don't pay your bills. Strangers don't rescue you when you burn your bridges. Strangers don't care if you sleep on dirty sheets. Daddy, good night." "Mrs. Sterling," I said. I pulled the phone away from my ear. I could still hear her screaming my name, a tiny, tiny sound coming from the receiver. I pressed the button. The line went dead. The dial tone hummed in the silence of the room. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. My hand was shaking again. It hurt. God, it hurt. It felt like I had just cut off my own arm. But I knew the gangrene had set in long ago. If I didn't cut it off now, the poison would have killed me. Nia wasn't the little girl in pigtails anymore. She was a woman who had made a choice. She chose the lie. She chose the image. And now she had to live inside the frame she had built. I stood up and walked to the window. The streetlights of Atlanta were blurry through my tears. I wiped them away with the back of my hand. She realized tonight that I wasn't just a checkbook. She realized I wasn't a senile old man she could pat on the head and hide in the corner. She realized that Isaiah King was a force of nature. But she realized it too late. I turned off the lamp. I walked out of the den and climbed the stairs to my bedroom. The house was empty, but it felt cleaner than it had in years. The air was lighter. The war was on. They were going to come for me. Preston, Evelyn, maybe even Nia. They were going to try to take what was mine. They were going to try to prove I was crazy. Let them come. I built an empire from a single van. I fought unions, competitors, and Jim Crow laws in this state. A couple of broke social climbers and an ungrateful child. They didn't stand a chance. I laid down in the bed I used to share with Keta. I whispered a prayer to her. "I am sorry, baby," I said to the darkness. I had to do it. I had to let her fall so she could learn how to stand. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow was Monday, and on Monday I had a meeting with a private investigator. If they wanted to play dirty, I was going to show them what mud really looked like. The ceiling fan in the Starlight motel room wobbled on its axis, making a rhythmic click, click, click sound that was driving Preston Sterling insane. He lay on the lumpy mattress, staring up at the water stain, spreading across the drywall like a map of a country he didn't want to visit. The air conditioner rattled in the window, struggling against the Georgia heat and losing badly. The room smelled of mildew and cheap lemon cleaner, a scent that now coated the back of his throat. Next to him, Nia was finally asleep, curled into a tight ball, her tear-streaked face buried in a scratchy pillow. She was wearing one of his T-shirts because her silk pajamas were still in a black trash bag somewhere in the corner. Preston sat up. He grabbed the bottle of cheap whiskey he had bought from the liquor store down the road with the last of his cash. He took a swig. It tasted like gasoline compared to the single malt he was supposed to be drinking right now. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was his mother. "Evelyn," he answered, his voice rough. "Preston, darling." Her voice was sharp, urgent. "Where are you? I've been calling for hours. Did you get into the penthouse?" "No, mother," Preston hissed, careful not to wake Nia. "We are in a motel. A roach motel. He locked us out. He locked us out of everything. That man is a savage." Evelyn spat. "Does he know who he is dealing with? We are Steerings. He doesn't care. Mother, he cut the cards. He took the house. He took the car. I am standing here in my underwear in a room that costs $40 a night, and I have exactly $12 left to my name. Calm down, Preston. Hysteria is unbecoming." Evelyn said, her voice regaining that icy composure he knew so well. "We need to think. We need to strategize. This isn't over. It's just a negotiation." Negotiation. "He told me to go to hell, Mother. He said I wasn't a threat. I was a punchline." "He is emotional," Evelyn said dismissively. "He is hurt because his little girl chose us over him." But emotions fade. Assets remain, and we need to secure those assets. "How?" Preston asked, taking another drink. "He holds all the cards. The money is his. The property is his." "Is it?" Evelyn mused. "Think, Preston. Think about what you told me last month, about how he forgot his keys at dinner, about how he sometimes repeats stories." Preston frowned. "Everyone forgets their keys, Mother. He's old." "Exactly." Evelyn said, the shark smile audible in her voice. "He is old. 72. He has worked hard his whole life. Stress, exhaustion, it takes a toll on the mind. Dementia is a tragic silent thief, Preston. It starts slowly. Erratic behavior, sudden outbursts of anger, paranoia, making rash financial decisions like cancelling a $4 million wedding on a whim." Preston sat up straighter. The gears in his head, usually clogged with gambling odds and crypto trends, started to turn. You think we can say he's senile?" "I don't think, darling." "I know," Evelyn said. "I spoke to Dr. Aris this morning. You remember him from the club? The one who lost his license for overprescribing. He has been reinstated," Evelyn corrected quickly, "and he owes the family a favor, a significant one." I explained the situation to him. I told him about Isaiah's sudden violent mood swings, about his financial recklessness, about how he abandoned his own daughter on her wedding night. And Dr. Aris agrees that it sounds like a classic case of rapid onset dementia, possibly Alzheimer's with aggressive tendencies. He believes Isaiah is a danger to himself and others, especially to his finances. Preston looked at Nia sleeping beside him. He looked at the trash bags in the corner. He thought about the debts he owed to people who didn't use lawyers to collect. If he is incompetent, Preston whispered. Then he needs a guardian, Evelyn finished. Someone to manage his estate, someone to make sure he doesn't squander his fortune on erratic impulses. And who better than his only child, his devoted daughter? But he has lawyers. Mother Marcus. He's sharp. Marcus is a lawyer, not a doctor, Evelyn countered. If we have a medical professional willing to sign an affidavit stating that Isaiah King lacks the mental capacity to make financial decisions, we can file for an emergency conservatorship. We can freeze his assets. We can take control Preston for his own good, of course. Preston felt a thrill run through him. It was the same rush he got when he went all in on a pair of kings. It was risky. It was dangerous. But the pot was huge. We need proof, Preston said. We can't just say it. We create the narrative, Evelyn said. We tell everyone about the wedding, how he snapped, how he was screaming incoherently. We get witnesses, the guests. They saw the chaos. They will believe he lost his mind because the alternative is believing he did it on purpose, and no sane father would do that. Okay, Preston said, his mind racing. Okay, Dr. Eris, he will make the call. He is calling Adult Protective Services first thing Monday morning. Evelyn said he is filing a report of self-neglect and financial instability. Once the investigation starts, we file for emergency custody of the estate. By Friday, you could be signing checks from his account. Preston looked at the water stain on the ceiling. It didn't look like a stain anymore. It looked like a dollar sign. You are a genius, Mother. I am a survivor, Preston, and so are you. Now get some sleep. We have a busy week ahead of us. We are going to save poor Isaiah from himself. She hung up. Preston stared at the phone. A slow smile spread across his face. He wasn't broke, he was just in transition. He poured the last of the whiskey into the plastic cup from the bathroom. To family, he whispered and downed it. Monday morning came with a vengeance. I was sitting in my office at the depot, the same office I had occupied for 40 years. It wasn't fancy. No mahogany desks or leather chairs here, just metal filing cabinets, a calendar from a tire company on the wall, and a view of the yard where my trucks used to line up. I had sold the fleet 5 years ago, but I kept the building. I kept the office. It was my command center. It was where I felt most like myself. I was going through the foreclosure notices Marcus had sent over for the penthouse when my desk phone rang. Not my cell, the landline, the number only a few people had. King, I answered. Mr. King, this is Officer Miller from the Atlanta PD. I sat up. I knew Miller. His dad used to drive for me back in the 80s. Miller, what can I do for you? Mr. King, I look, this is awkward. Miller said, his voice hesitant. We just got a call from Adult Protective Services. They asked for a police escort for a wellness check at your residence. I frowned. A wellness check? I am fine, Miller. I am sitting at my desk drinking coffee. I know that, sir. But the report, it is serious. It claims you are suffering from severe dementia. Says you are a danger to yourself. Says you have been having violent episodes and giving away large sums of money. I felt the anger flare hot and sudden, but I tamped it down. Dementia, violent episodes, giving away money. Let me guess, I said, my voice cold. Did the report come from a Dr. Eris? I'm not supposed to say, sir, but yeah, that is the name on the file. I laughed. A short, sharp bark. Dr. Eris. The pill pusher from Buckhead. I haven't seen a doctor in 6 months, Miller, and my doctor is Dr. Evans over at Grady. I figured as much, Mr. King. That is why I called you before we rolled out. But APS, they have to investigate. It is protocol. They are on their way to your house now. My house is empty. I said, I am here at the yard. Okay, I will redirect them to you, but Mr. King, you should probably have your lawyer present. This doctor attached a preliminary psychiatric evaluation. It looks detailed. Detailed fiction, I said. Thank you, Miller. You are a good man. You looked out for my pops when he got hurt, Mr. King. I don't forget. We will be there in 20 minutes. Just keep it cool, okay? Don't give them anything they can use. I am always cool, son. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a moment, letting the pieces fall into place. So that was their play. They couldn't bully me. They couldn't guilt me. So now they were going to try to bury me. They were going to use the system, the same system that had tried to keep men like me down for centuries, to strip me of my rights. They were going to paint me as a crazy old black man who didn't know what to do with his money. So the responsible white folks had to step in and take it. It was bold, it was vicious, and it was exactly what I expected from a Sterling. But they made one mistake. They forgot who I was. I didn't build King Logistics by being soft. I built it by knowing the roads better than anyone else. I built it by knowing where the potholes were and how to navigate around them. And I built it by making friends in low places and high places. I picked up my cell phone. I called Marcus. "They are coming," I said. "The dementia play already?" Marcus asked. "They are moving faster than I thought. They are desperate," I said. "APS is on the way with a police escort." "I am leaving now," Marcus said. "Do not say a word until I get there. And Zeke, call Dr. Evans. Tell him to meet us there too. Bring your full medical history, the physical you had last month, the cognitive test you took for the insurance update." "Way ahead of you," I said. "I'm also calling the city councilman. He owes me a favor for the campaign donation last year. I think he might be interested to know that a corrupt doctor is weaponizing APS against a prominent business owner." "Good," Marcus said. "Let's turn this wellness check into a seminar on regret." I hung up. I called Dr. Evans. He was a busy man, but when I told him what was happening, he cleared his schedule. "I will be there in 15 minutes, he said. "Nobody calls my patients senile but me." Then I made one more call to a number that wasn't in my contacts, but was memorized in my head. "Hello," a gruff voice answered. "Big Tiny," I said. "It is Zeke. Mr. Zeke. Long time. What do you need?" "I need a little security at the yard," I said. "I have some visitors coming who might need a reminder about manners. Nothing violent, just presence. Say no more, Mr. Zeke. The boys are around the corner. We will be there in 5. Tiny was 6 and 7 and weighed 300 labine. He ran a private security firm that specialized in high-risk asset protection. He used to bounce at the club my cousin owned. He was the kind of man who didn't need to shout to be heard. I sat back in my chair. I looked at the calendar on the wall. Monday. They wanted a show. They wanted to prove I was incompetent. Fine. I would give them a performance, but it wasn't going to be the tragedy they wrote. It was going to be a master class in why you never ever try to hustle a hustler. I poured myself a cup of coffee from the thermos. Black, no sugar. Let them come. I watched through the blinds of my office window as the convoy pulled into the gravel lot of the depot. It was a parade of authority. First came the Atlanta police cruiser lights off, but presence loud. That was Miller. Behind him was a beige sedan, government-issued, looking tired and overworked. That would be Adult Protective Services. And flanking the entrance, standing like 2 gargoyles in black T-shirts, were Big, Tiny and his associate arms crossed, watching the vehicles with the kind of professional disinterest that makes people nervous. I turned away from the window and looked at my reflection in the glass of the awards cabinet. I had changed out of my work shirt. I was wearing my charcoal 3-piece suit, a crisp white shirt, and a silk tie Keta had given me for our 40th anniversary. I didn't look like a confused geriatric. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like the man who signed the front of the checks, not the back. Dr. Evans was sitting on the leather sofa reviewing a file. Marcus was standing by the desk, arranging a stack of documents with geometric precision. "Showtime," I said. Marcus nodded. "Remember, Zeke, you are calm. You are lucid. You are in control. Let them speak first. Let them dig the hole." There was a knock at the door. Big Tiny opened it before they could knock again. He filled the frame, looking down at the woman standing there, Mrs. Gable. Tiny rumbled, "Mr. King is expecting you." A woman stepped in. She was middle-aged, wearing a sensible pantsuit and carrying a heavy briefcase. She looked exhausted, the look of a social worker who has seen too many bad situations and not enough happy endings. Officer Miller followed her, and taking off his cap out of respect. Mrs. Gable stopped in the middle of the room. She looked at the mahogany desk. She looked at the wall of framed commendations from the city of Atlanta. She looked at Dr. Evans, the chief of internal medicine at Grady Hospital. And finally, she looked at me. She blinked. This wasn't the scene she had been briefed on. She had been told to expect a hoarding situation, a senile old man living in squalor, shouting at clouds. Instead, she had walked into a board meeting. "Mr. Isaiah King," she asked, her voice tentative. I stood up and extended my hand. My grip was firm. "Good morning, ma'am. Please have a seat. Can I offer you some coffee? It is fresh." She took my hand clearly off balance. No. "No, thank you, sir. I am with Adult Protective Services. I assume Officer Miller explained why we are here." I sat back down, steepling my fingers. "He did. You received a report concerning my welfare, allegations of dementia, financial instability, self-neglect." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a file. "Yes, the report was quite detailed, Mr. King. It came from a medical professional, a Dr. Aris. It states that you have been exhibiting aggressive behavior, memory loss, and that you recently liquidated substantial assets in a manic episode. Specifically, that you canned a wedding and left your family destitute due to paranoia." I nodded slowly. "Paranoia. That is a convenient word for prudence." Mrs. Gable Marcus stepped forward. "I am Marcus Thorne, Mr. King's legal counsel, and this is Dr. Benjamin Evans. I believe you know his reputation." Mrs. Gable looked at Dr. Evans. "I do. It is an honor, Doctor." Dr. Evans stood up. He didn't smile. He handed Mrs. Gable a thick file. "This is Mr. King's complete medical history updated as of this morning." Dr. Evans said, "I conducted a full physical and cognitive evaluation of Isaiah at 8 a.m. today. His blood pressure is 120/80. His heart is strong, and his score on the Montreal Cognitive Assessment was 30 out of 30, a perfect score. In my professional opinion, Isaiah King is sharper than most men half his age. The diagnosis of dementia provided by Dr. A's is not only incorrect, it is medically negligent. In fact, I'm filing a complaint with the medical board against Dr. Aris for diagnosing a patient he hasn't examined in years." Mrs. Gable flipped through the file. She looked at the test results. She looked at the dates. Her shoulders slumped. She knew she had been played. "I see," she said quietly. "The medical evidence is overwhelming. But Mr. King, what about the financial aspect? The report claims you are being financially exploited or are squandering your estate. The wedding cancellation, that is a massive loss of funds." I leaned forward. This was the moment. "Mrs. Gable," I said, "I am not the one being exploited. I am the one stopping the exploitation." Marcus slid a second file across the desk. It landed with a heavy thud. "This is a record of unauthorized withdrawals from Mr. King's retirement accounts." Marcus said $50, dollars taken by his daughter, Nia King, under false pretenses. Here are credit card statements showing lavish spending by his future son-in-law, Preston Sterling, on gambling sites and luxury goods charged to Mr. King's accounts without his knowledge. I watched Mrs. Gable's eyes widen as she turned the pages. She saw the numbers, she saw the dates. "And here," I said, sliding a USB drive across the desk, "this is a recording of a conversation between my daughter and her fiancé. It was recorded on my property. In it, they discuss having me declared incompetent specifically, so they can access my liquid assets to pay off illegal gambling debts. They discuss finding a doctor who can be bought." Mrs. Gable stopped reading. She looked up at me. Her face had changed. The exhaustion was gone, replaced by a steely professional anger. APS workers hate one thing more than neglect, and that is people weaponizing their agency to abuse the elderly. "They filed this report to cover their tracks," she asked. "They filed it to strip me of my rights," I said. "They wanted guardianship. They wanted to lock me away so they could spend my life's work on crypto and vanity." I stood up and walked around the desk. I stood next to her. "Mrs. Gable, I worked for 40 years to build this. I drove trucks until my back gave out. I saved every dime. I raised that girl to be strong. But she decided she wanted to be rich instead. When I cut off the money, she tried to cut off my freedom. That is not dementia. That is a hostile takeover." Mrs. Gable closed the file. She took a deep breath. "Mr. King," she said, her voice formal, "based on the evidence provided by Dr. Evans and your legal counsel, I'm closing the investigation into your alleged incapacity immediately. You are clearly competent and in no danger of self-neglect." "Thank you," I said. "However," she continued, pulling out a fresh form from her briefcase, "based on the financial records and the evidence of coercion you have provided, I'm opening a new case file today." I raised an eyebrow. "A new case?" "Yes," she said, "against Nia King and Preston Sterling for elder financial abuse and exploitation in the state of Georgia. This is a felony. Attempting to use the legal system to defraud a senior citizen is a crime, Mr. King. And using a fraudulent medical report to initiate an APS investigation is a crime." I looked at Marcus. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. This was the turn. "You want to investigate them?" I asked. "I am required to," Mrs. Gable said. "You are a vulnerable adult under the statute, Mr. King, by virtue of your age. They targeted you, they stole from you, and they tried to imprison you in the system. I don't take that lightly. I'm going to forward this file to the District Attorney's Special Crimes Unit." She stood up. She looked at Officer Miller. "Officer, I need you to sign this as a witness to the documents provided. We are going to need to interview the subjects." Officer Miller stepped forward, pen in hand. "It would be my pleasure, ma'am." Mrs. Gable turned back to me. "Mr. King, I am sorry you had to go through this. It is despicable, but you are safe now. We will handle this." I shook her hand again. "Thank you, Mrs. Gable. I appreciate you doing your job." She gathered her files. She looked at the USB drive in her hand. "If this recording is what you say it is," she said, "they are not just looking at civil suits. They are looking at prison time." She walked out of the office, her heels clicking on the linoleum. Officer Miller followed her, giving me a salute on the way out. Big Tiny closed the door behind them. The room was silent again. Marcus let out a long breath. "Remind me never to play poker with you, Zeke. You just turned a defense into an indictment in 20 minutes. I didn't smile. I walked back to the window. I looked out at the yard. They wanted the system, Marcus. They wanted the state to get involved. Well, they got their wish. The state is involved now. "Is this what you wanted?" Dr. Evans asked, packing up his stethoscope. "To send your daughter to jail?" "No," I said softly. "I wanted to walk her down the aisle. I wanted to hold my grandchildren. I wanted to leave her a legacy. But she didn't want the legacy, Ben. She wanted the loot, and she was willing to bury me to get it." I turned back to them. "Nia thinks this is a game. She thinks she can cry to her mother-in-law and make it go away. She doesn't know that Mrs. Gable isn't a mother-in-law. She is a hammer." Marcus picked up his briefcase. "What is the next move, Zeke?" I checked my watch. It was noon. "The next move is finding out who Preston really is," I said. "I have a meeting with a private investigator in an hour. If he is desperate enough to try to commit me, he is hiding something bigger than gambling debts. Men like that always have a skeleton in the closet. I want to find the bones, Marcus. I want to find every single bone." I grabbed my jacket. The morning victory didn't feel like a triumph. It felt like survival. I had kept my freedom, but I had confirmed my worst fear. My daughter wasn't just ungrateful, she was dangerous, and now I had to treat her like any other threat to the business. I had to neutralize her. I walked out of the office, past Big Tiny, past the empty parking spot where the APS car used to be. The sun was high and hot. It was a good day for hunting. I sat in a booth at a Waffle House off the highway, far away from the prying eyes of Buckhead. Across from me sat JT, a private investigator I had used back in the days when hijackings were a common threat to my trucks. JT was a man who could find a needle in a haystack and then tell you who manufactured the needle and how much they paid for the steel. He didn't look like much, just a guy in a windbreaker eating hash browns. But he held the keys to the kingdom in a manila folder next to his coffee cup. I had hired him 2 days ago, right after the wedding imploded. I needed to know who I was dealing with. I needed to know if Preston Sterling was just a spoiled brat with a gambling problem or if he was something worse. JT pushed the folder across the sticky table. He didn't smile. That was bad. JT usually smiled when he caught a cheater or found a hidden bank account. His face was grim like an undertaker viewing a particularly messy body. "You aren't going to like this, Zeke," he said quietly. I picked up my coffee. "Try me. I have had a hell of a week. I don't think anything can surprise me now." JT tapped the folder. "The Steerings, the old money, the aristocracy of Atlanta. It is all smoke, Zeke. It is a mirage." I opened the file. The first document wasn't a deed or a trust fund statement. It was a bankruptcy filing. Chapter 7, dated 10 years ago. "They are broke?" I asked. "Broke doesn't even cover it," JT said. "They are destitute. The father, William Sterling Sr., he blew the family fortune on bad real estate deals in '08. He died of a heart attack a year later, leaving Evelyn with nothing but debts and a leased Mercedes. They lost the estate in Savannah. They lost the summer home. The only reason they are still in that house in Buckhead is because of a legal loophole in the foreclosure process that has kept the bank from evicting them for 5 years. They haven't paid a mortgage payment since Obama was in office." I stared at the paper. I thought about Mrs. Sterling looking down her nose at me. I thought about her speech at the wedding talking about liquidity and cultural understandings. She wasn't protecting her status. She was protecting her survival. "So they are living on credit?" I asked. "They are living on other people's credit," JT corrected. "That is where it gets ugly. Zeke, turn the page." I flipped the page. There were photos of 2 young women. They looked a lot like Nia. Professional, polished, successful. "Who are they?" "That is Sarah from Charleston and Emily from Birmingham," JT said. "Preston's ex-fiancée. Ex-fiancée. Nia told me Preston had never been engaged. She said he was waiting for the right one. He was waiting for the right bank account," JT said bluntly. "He was engaged to Sarah 3 years ago. Her daddy owned a chain of car dealerships. Preston charmed her, moved into her condo, drove her cars. 6 months later, the engagement ended. Sarah filed for bankruptcy a month after that. Preston had run up $200,000 on her cards and convinced her to invest in a tech startup that didn't exist. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. And Emily, same story. JT said her father was a surgeon. Preston got her to co-sign a loan for a business venture. He vanished with the cash 2 weeks before the wedding. The family is still paying it off. I looked at the photos of these women. They were smiling, happy, oblivious, just like Nia had been. "This isn't just a bad boyfriend," Zeke JT said, leaning in. "This is a business model. The Steerings are grifters, professional con artists. Evelyn is the architect and Preston is the bait. They target women from wealthy families, preferably new money families, who want to buy into that old South prestige. They dazzle them with the name, the manners, the country club memberships that they probably haven't paid for in years. They get access to the accounts, they drain them dry, and then they move on to the next mark. Nia is number 3, I whispered. Nia is the whale." JT said they did their homework. Zeke. They knew you sold King Logistics. They knew you were sitting on a mountain of cash. They knew Nia was your only child. They weren't marrying her. They were acquiring her. That $50,000 Nia stole, that wasn't for gambling debts, Zeke. That was their operating capital. That was money to pay the lease on the Porsche, to pay the minimums on Evelyn's credit cards, to keep the lights on in that foreclosure mansion so they could keep up the charade until the marriage license was signed. Once that ink was dry, they would have had legal access to everything. They would have picked you clean. I closed the folder. My hand was shaking, but not from anger this time. It was shaking from a deep, hollow ache in my chest. I wasn't hurting for the money. I could lose $50,000 and make it back in a week. I wasn't hurting because I had been tricked. I was a businessman. I knew how to spot a bad deal eventually. I was hurting for Nia, my daughter, the girl I raised to be strong, the girl I sent to the best school so she would be smart, the girl I taught to value character over cash. She had looked at Preston Sterling, a man with no job, no honor and no money, and she had seen a prince. Why? Because he was white, because he had a last name that sounded like a bank, because he knew which fork to use at dinner. She was so desperate to escape me. She was so desperate to scrub away the scent of diesel fuel and hard work that clung to our name. She wanted the fairy tale so badly that she walked right into a wolf's den and laid down her head. She traded a father who would die for her for a husband who was just waiting to bleed her dry. She looked at me, a man who built an empire from dirt, and saw embarrassment. She looked at Preston, a leech and a loafer, and saw a future. That is what broke me, not the fraud, the foolishness, the absolute blinding self-hatred that made her an easy mark for two broke social climbers. Does she know? I asked JT. Does she have any idea? I don't think so. JT said the con only works if the mark believes the dream. If she knew they were broke, the illusion would shatter. She thinks he is just having a liquidity crisis. She thinks he is temporarily embarrassed. She doesn't know he is permanently destitute. I looked out the window of the Waffle House. Cars were rushing by on the interstate, people going places, chasing dreams. She called me last night, I said quietly. She was crying. She was begging for money. She blamed me. She said I ruined her life. You saved her life, Zeke JT said firmly. If that wedding had happened, if you had signed over that house, if you hadn't frozen those accounts, by this time next year Nia would be bankrupt. You didn't ruin her life. You stopped a robbery in progress. But she doesn't see it that way. I said she thinks I am the villain. She thinks I am the angry black father who couldn't stand to see his daughter marry up. She doesn't know she was marrying down, way down. What do you want to do? JT asked. We have enough here for a criminal investigation. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. You could go to the cops. I thought about it. I thought about seeing Preston in handcuffs. I thought about Evelyn Sterling's mugshot. It would be satisfying, it would be justice, but it wouldn't save Nia, not really. If I arrested them now, she would just see me as the tyrant. She would think I destroyed her happiness out of spite. She would visit Preston in prison and think he was a martyr. She needed to see the rot for herself. She needed to smell it. No cops yet, I said. Not yet. Then what? I need her to wake up, I said. I need her to see him without the mask. I need her to realize that the aesthetic she loves so much is just cheap paint over a crumbling wall. I opened the folder again. I looked at the bankruptcy filing. I looked at the list of debts. Make me copies, I said. Digital and hard copies. I want everything. Every credit report, every foreclosure notice, every statement from the other victims. You got it, JT said. I pulled a roll of cash out of my pocket and laid it on the table. It was more than the invoice, but JT was worth it. Keep digging, I said. Find out where the money went, the 50,000. I want to know exactly whose pocket it landed in. I bet you $100 it went to a lawyer or a shark, JT said, pocketing the cash. I stood up. I felt heavy old. The anger was still there, burning hot and low, but it was mixed with a profound grief. I had lost my daughter twice, first to her own vanity and now to a predator. I have to go. JT, I have a meeting with a ghost. A ghost? Yeah, I said. My daughter, the one who used to love me. I need to find out if she's still in there somewhere, buried under all that sterling nonsense. I walked out of the diner. The sun was bright, too bright for the darkness I felt. I got into my truck. I looked at the empty passenger seat where the deed used to be. Nia was alone now. She was in a motel room with a man who viewed her as a payday. She was scared, she was humiliated, and she was broke. It was the perfect time for a family reunion, but not the kind she wanted. I wasn't coming with a checkbook. I was coming with a mirror, and I was going to force her to look into it until she saw the fool staring back. I started the engine. The rumble of the truck was the only honest thing in my life right now. I put it in gear. Preston Sterling wanted to play games with my money. Fine. I was about to show him what happens when you try to hustle the bank. The bank forecloses and the bank takes everything. Tuesday morning came with a grey sky and a humidity that stuck to your skin like a bad memory. I was sitting in my office at the depot, reviewing the maintenance logs for the few trucks I still kept for contract work, when the gate buzzer sounded big tiny. My head of security buzzed me on the intercom. "Mr. Zeke," he said, his voice low, "you have a visitor. It is the groom." I looked at the security monitor. There, standing at the chain-link fence, looking like a man who had slept in his car, was Preston Sterling. His suit was wrinkled. His hair, usually slicked back with expensive product, was dull and messy. He looked like a man who had lost everything, which, thanks to me, he had. "Let him in," I said. "But Tiny, keep an eye on him." I sat back in my chair and waited. I didn't stand up when he walked in. I didn't offer him water. I just watched him. Preston closed the door behind him. He stood there for a moment, wringing his hands. He looked around the office, his eyes darting from the filing cabinets to the safe in the corner. He was assessing the room, looking for value, looking for an angle. A grifter never stops working, even when he is drowning. "Mr. King," he started, his voice cracking. "Isaiah, can I call you Isaiah?" "You can call me Mr. King," I said. "What do you want, Preston?" He took a step forward, and then, to my absolute disgust, he dropped to his knees. Right there on the linoleum floor that had seen more honest mud and grease than he would ever know. He fell to his knees and buried his face in his hands. "I am so sorry," he sobbed. It was a performance. I have seen better acting in insurance fraud cases, but he was committed to the bit. "I am a broken man, Mr. King. I ruined everything. I let my pride get in the way. I let my mother get in the way. I love Nia. I love her more than anything. And I hurt her father. I can never forgive myself." I watched him cry for a solid minute. I didn't feel pity. I felt the same way I feel when I see a rat caught in a trap. It is ugly, but it is necessary. "Get up, Preston," I said. "You are ruining your pants, and I know for a fact you can't afford to dry clean them right now." He sniffled and slowly got to his feet. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. He looked at me with what he probably thought was a look of humble determination. "You are right, sir. You are right about everything. I have been lost. But I want to make it right. I don't want your charity. I don't want a handout. I want to earn your respect back." I raised an eyebrow. "And how do you plan to do that, Preston?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. It was thick, bound with a plastic clip. He smoothed it out on my desk. "I have an opportunity," he said, his voice shifting. The tears were gone. The salesman was back. A chance to rebuild, not just for me, but for Nia, to give her the life she deserves, but doing it the right way, through investment, through work. I looked at the cover sheet. Sterling Heights, luxury condominiums, a vision for tomorrow. "What is this?" I asked. "It is a development project," Preston said, his eyes lighting up with the fever of the pitch. Prime real estate in Savannah. I have the permits. I have the architectural renderings. It is shovel-ready, Mr. King. All I need is the seed capital. The banks, well, you know how banks are right now. They don't have vision. But you built an empire. You have vision. I opened the prospectus. I flipped through the pages. It looked professional. Glossy photos. Charts showing projected returns of 20%. It looked like a gold mine. But I knew better. I knew Savannah real estate, and I knew JT, my private investigator, had already run a check on every asset the Steerings claimed to own. This land, I said, tapping a map. The Sterling family owns this. It has been in the trust for generations. Preston lied without blinking. We are finally ready to develop it. But we have a liquidity issue, as you know. I need a partner, a silent partner, someone to put up the initial 50,000 for the groundbreaking. 50,000. The exact amount Nia had stolen from me, the exact amount they needed to pay off the loan sharks who were breathing down his neck. So, you want me to invest $50 in a project run by the man who tried to commit me to a nursing home 3 days ago? I asked. Preston flinched. That was my mother. She was misguided. She thought you were sick. I tried to stop her. I swear that is why I am here, to make amends, to show you I can build something real. If you help me with this, I can pay you back triple in a year. I can buy Nia a house with my own money. I can be the son-in-law you wanted. I looked at him. I saw the desperation sweating out of his pores. He wasn't building condos. He was building a coffin for his problems, and he wanted me to pay for the nails. I knew the land in the photos. It wasn't buildable. It was swampland, protected wetlands, and the Steerings didn't own it. It had been foreclosed on 5 years ago. This entire binder was a fabrication, a Ponzi scheme printed on high-gloss paper. It was a federal crime, wire fraud, securities fraud, and he was pitching it to me in my office. I closed the binder. I leaned back and let out a long sigh. I rubbed my temples as if I were conflicted, as if the father in me was wearing with the businessman. "Preston," I said slowly, you hurt me bad." "I know, sir, I know, but Nia, she loves you. God help me, she loves you. And if this project is real, if this can truly set you up for life—" "It is real," Preston said, leaning in, smelling the blood in the water. "It is a sure thing. I just need the startup cash." I opened my desk drawer. I pulled out my checkbook, the big business ledger. Preston's eyes locked onto it. He stopped breathing. 50,000, I said. "That is a lot of money, son." "It is an investment, sir. It is the future." I uncapped my pen. I hesitated. "If I do this, if I write this check, I want your word. No more games, no more lies. You take this money, you build this project, and you treat my daughter like a queen." "I swear it," Preston said, "on my life, on the Sterling name, the name that was worth less than the ink on the paper." I wrote the date. I wrote Preston Sterling. On the pay line, I wrote $50, $0 and 0100. In the memo line, I wrote Investment Capital Sterling Heights. I tore the check out of the book. The sound was loud in the quiet office. I held it out. Preston reached for it. His hand was shaking. He snatched it from my fingers like a starving dog snatching a bone. He looked at the numbers. He looked at my signature. A look of pure, unadulterated relief washed over him, followed quickly by a flash of triumph. He thought he had done it. He thought he had hustled the old man one last time. "Thank you, Isaiah. Thank you. You won't regret this." "I hope not, Preston," I said. "For Nia's sake." He backed away, clutching the check to his chest. "I have to go. I have to get this to the contractors to start the work." "Go," I said. "Build your future." He turned and practically ran out of the office. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't shake my hand. He just ran with the money. I waited until I heard the front door close. I waited until I saw him sprinting across the parking lot to his rental car. Then I picked up my phone. I didn't call Marcus. I dialed a number with a 202 area code, Washington, D.C., Specifically the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI. Agent Miller, I said, when the line clicked open. Mr. King, did he show? He just left. I said he pitched the swampland. He took the check. $50,000. Did you mark the memo line? Yes. Investment capital. He took it across state lines if he deposits it in his account in South Carolina like we think he will. That triggers federal jurisdiction and the documents, Agent Miller asked. I have the prospectus right here, I said, tapping the glossy binder. Fake deeds, fake environmental reports. It is a textbook Ponzi scheme. He is soliciting investment for a property he doesn't own to pay off personal debts. Excellent, Miller said. We have been tracking the Sterling family's financial irregularities for months, but we needed a concrete transaction. We needed him to actually take the money for a fraudulent purpose. You just handed us the smoking gun. When will you pick him up? I asked. Not yet, Miller said. Let him deposit the check. Let the wire hit the bank. We want to trace where he sends it immediately after. We want to see if he pays the bookies or his mother. We want the whole network. Once that check clears, we have him on bank fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. How long? 2 days, maybe 3. Understood. I hung up the phone. I looked at the empty chair where Preston had kneeled. He thought he had won. He thought he had played on my emotions. He didn't realize that I had emotionally divested from him the moment he let my daughter walk away from that gate. I wasn't giving him a lifeline. I was giving him enough rope to hang himself. The check was real. The money was in the account. But the moment he touched it, the moment he moved it, he wasn't just a bad son-in-law. He was a federal case number. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out the bottle of whiskey. I didn't drink. I just looked at the amber liquid. Naya would hate me for this. When the agents kicked down their door, when they dragged Preston out in handcuffs, she would scream that I set him up. She would say I entrapped him, and she would be right. But sometimes you have to burn the field to save the farm. Preston was a disease. He was eating her future, and the only cure was to cut him out root and stem. I put the bottle back. I had work to do. I had a legacy to protect. And I had a daughter to save, even if she kicked and screamed the whole way down. Preston Sterling was going to prison, and I was going to be the one who paid for his ticket. Wednesday night arrived with a humid heaviness that clung to the air, the kind of weather that warns you a storm is brewing just over the horizon. I parked my truck in the driveway of the Sterling estate in Buckhead. It was the first time I had been invited inside the main house. Usually I was the man writing the checks from a distance or the man being turned away at the gate. But tonight was different. Tonight was the reconciliation dinner. Nia had called me the day before, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and nerves. She said that Preston was so grateful for the investment opportunity I had given him, the rope I had given him to hang himself, though she didn't know that they wanted to celebrate. She said, Mrs. Sterling wanted to properly welcome me into the family fold, to put the unpleasantness of the wedding behind us. I knew it was a lie. I knew this wasn't a peace offering. It was a victory lap. They thought they had won. They thought the $50,000 check Preston ran off with was just the beginning. The first crack in the dam before the flood of my money washed away their debts. They wanted to keep me close, keep me happy, keep the tap flowing. I checked the recorder app on my phone. It was running. I slid the phone into the breast pocket of my jacket, the microphone facing out. I wasn't here to eat. I was here to witness. I needed to see one last time if there was any part of my daughter left in that house, or if she had been completely consumed by the Sterling rot. I walked up the steps. The paint on the columns was peeling slightly near the base, covered up by strategically placed potted ferns. The old money facade was crumbling just like their bank accounts. Evelyn Sterling opened the door. She was wearing a silk caftan and enough gold jewelry to sink a small boat. Her smile was tight, stretched thin over teeth that looked too white to be real. Isaiah, she exclaimed, extending a limp hand. Welcome, welcome. We are so delighted you could make it. Please come in. We are just casual tonight, family style. I stepped into the foyer. It smelled of dust and expensive lees, a funeral parlor smell. Preston came bounding down the hallway, a drink in his hand, looking manic. The check must have cleared. He looked like a man who had just bet the house on black and was waiting for the wheel to stop spinning. "Isaiah, good to see you, sir. Can I get you a drink?" "Scotch brandy. We have the good stuff tonight." "Water is fine," I said. I walked into the dining room. Nia was there arranging napkins. She looked up when I entered. She didn't smile. She looked tired. She looked like a woman who was holding her breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. She was wearing a dress I had bought her for Christmas last year, but she had accessorized it with a pearl necklace that looked like it belonged to Evelyn. She was trying so hard to blend in, to be a sterling, that she was fading into the wallpaper. "Hi, Daddy," she said softly. "Thank you for coming." I nodded at her. I didn't hug her. I couldn't. The distance between us wasn't just physical anymore. It was a canyon. We sat down. The table was set with fine china, chipped on the edges if you looked closely. The silverware was tarnished. The staff Evelyn always bragged about was nowhere to be seen. The food was sitting in serving dishes on the sideboard. It looked like takeout from a high-end bistro, plated to look homemade. So Evelyn began pouring herself a generous glass of wine. "Preston tells me, you two have come to a wonderful understanding regarding his business venture." "I must say, Isaiah, I was surprised. I didn't think you had the vision for land development." I unfolded my napkin. "I have vision, Mrs. Sterling. I can see things quite clearly." She laughed, a tinkling, condescending sound. "Oh, I'm sure you do. In your line of work, trucking, was it? One must have good eyesight to read the road signs, I suppose." She took a sip of wine and looked at me over the rim of the glass. Her eyes were cold beads of blue glass. "We were just discussing the menu," she said. "I ordered something I thought you would be comfortable with. I know your palate is likely accustomed to heavier fare soul food. Isn't that what they call it? Fried things, grease. We try to eat lighter here, more refined. But I made sure there was plenty of seasoning for you. I know how your people love their spices." I sat perfectly still. The insult was wrapped in velvet, but it was a razor blade nonetheless. "Your people." I looked at Nia. She was staring at her plate, pushing a piece of asparagus around with her fork. She heard it. She knew what it meant. "The food is fine, Evelyn," I said evenly. "Oh, good," she purred. I was worried. You know, Nia has been adapting so well to our way of life. It must have been a shock for her coming.